Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of ITFA Insights podcast, and the global series that's giving you insights into all things ITFA around the world and what we're up to in the world of trade finance, credit risk, supply chain, and everything else that's pertinent to your business. Today, my guest is my fantastic friend, Chelsea Starley from Coface Intelligence Unit, based in Austin, Texas, and she's going to give a much better introduction on Coface and what she's up to there. So we'll give. I'm going to pass the baton over to her. I'm Anton Posner with the ITFA Americas Advisory Board, and also the CEO of Mercury Resources, a supply chain management company that focuses on commodities. But we'll talk more about that later. So welcome, Chelsea, to ITFA Insights, and fantastic to have you on. Usually we're having a cocktail someplace and in person, but today it's going to be virtual. So yeah, great.
Hey,
Thank you
I'm
for
happy
coming
to be
on.
here. Yeah, thanks for having me. Love being a part of ITFA. So I'm excited to participate in the
Yeah.
podcast and hopefully we can have a good conversation today.
We will for sure. So let's talk about how we met at first. I think I reached out to you on, was it LinkedIn, right? And
Actually,
connected.
it was me. Yeah, I had a colleague that said, "Hey, I don't know if you know about ITFA. There's an event in Houston. We're members of COFAS, so it would be a good event for you to attend." And I looked it up and I saw your name on there and I reached out to you on LinkedIn and you said, "Hey, I'm not going to be there, but let's connect." And because you're the ultimate networker, I mean, I don't know many
It's
CEOs of
true.
companies that are like, "Please, salesperson, set up a meeting with me." You were like, "Set up a meeting with me." I'm like, "This never happens. I'm never this lucky." It's just because you're the nicest man in the world and well networked. So I appreciate you. And since then, I have been fully integrated into IFA at this point, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And I've met some really great people. So yeah, so it was fun. It was fun to meet you. I'm glad our paths crossed, and I have a feeling we'll have a lot more opportunities together and a lot more different places
Yeah.
too. We have all these fun places we have to go with IFA.
It, it's almost like a cult, right? We got you in and now you can't escape, right? Now
I
you're
really
fully
can't.
integrated.
I
Like,
don't think
yeah.
I think you guys would threaten me if I ever tried to leave, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Just one of the family, buddy.
I
So
am.
tell us a little bit about your background and your current role at Coface, and tell us all things Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, let's do how much time do we have? Just kidding. So interestingly enough, I work at Coface, and if you know Coface, or if you're an American and you've never heard of it, it spells like Coface, as you can see here. But Coface is a basically we help with we're a credit insurer. We help with credit risk management. In my background had nothing to do with credit. Okay, I came from previous to this job, I was in pharmaceutical sales for about 12 years, and then prior to that, I did a short stint in television, and so I had no experience in this industry. And truthfully, it was quite beneficial for me because I came into this role with this clean slate to where I could ask questions that maybe folks that had been in the industry for a long time didn't feel that they needed to ask those questions. But because, as we know, things are forever evolving and changing, it benefited me because I just had a different perspective. I had the sales side of perspective. I
Hmm.
had the okay, I know that when I sell something and we have to extend credit can very well ruin a deal for me. And I know what that gap is, and I know how it is for the risk that we take on. And so I knew the other side of it, but I didn't certainly understand credit. And it's been really great for me to learn about it. And what I will say, in this exploring this role and being able to ask all of these questions, it's just been meeting people like yourself and folks around this industry that have been just so great to help me with their experience, and I learn from others' experience. So it's been really fun for me. And then most importantly, I think it's just been a way of creating a brand. And what I love about Coface is that we're well known, especially in the European markets. We're very
Hmm.
well known, and if you know trade credit insurance, you know Coface.
Right. Yeah.
But not everyone in the US knows about trade credit insurance, which is fun because that means we get to go educate some people. There's still work to be done. And then in addition, they really, even if they know COFAS and they know trade credit insurance, they probably don't know that we have a business information unit and that
Mhm.
we work separately from it. So it's been really fun because it's almost like a startup within a big organization, and it's a great group to work for. So it's been a lot. It's been fun learning, and I'm happy to be here today to be able to talk about it. So thank you.
Yeah, like you said, building the brand right about Coface's business information unit. That's the new element, right? People think Coface just strictly from the credit insurance side, as I did, and then learning more about what you do in the business information group, right, has been great, right, to understand that there's so much more beyond the credit insurance part. So, and
Yeah.
credit, of course, is the backbone of every organization, right? So important to multinationals, companies like our company, Mercury Group, right? We're constantly extending credit to our counterparties, right? Our client base of multinational, international trading firms, producers that are selling cross-border, are constantly dealing with risk management and assessing the risk in respect to giving credit to counterparties, right? So, what's the market doing to improve efficiency currently and accuracy in assessing the credit risk when it comes to international trade and what we're talking about? I say an ever changing environment. I think I'm understating that in the current times at this point. But yeah, so I want
Yeah.
to let you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so interesting is, well, one thing that drew me to Coface, again, someone with zero experience in this industry. But what I did know at the time that I joined Coface, is that we had just made it through a global pandemic, to
Mm,
which I knew as a consumer with no understanding of what it actually takes to get folks from port A to port B across oceans, through conflicts, through geopolitical, through macroeconomical problems, through elections, all of those things. I had no idea. Truthfully, I never really put any thought into what does it take for me to get that toilet paper that's on shortage because we have a pandemic? Like, why toilet paper is still not sure. But like
By the
that
way,
is
there's like no toilet paper coming in internationally. So everyone that hoarded toilet paper when they thought there was going to be a port strike, it's produced domestically. It's not coming in the airport. By
you
the
don't
way,
need to do that.
that was one of the things. Anyway, I
It's okay.
digress.
We got a rainstorm and
How
there's
did,
no toilet paper to be found. We got a
how did
rainstorm,
we
guys.
get
I'm
into
not sure.
toilet paper less than 10 minutes into this podcast, right?
Critical consumer need. Okay. And what I realized is that, oh my gosh, as a consumer, this seems like a no-brainer because yes, we're talking about credit generally, but the fact is that everything that we utilize on a day-to-day basis, everything that we do from a business operational standpoint has risk, whether it be the suppliers that are imposing the risk on it,
Mhm.
us, the buyers that are imposing risk on it. And there's just, I mean, I can name so many examples of things where it really put companies in a bad situation or made companies have to file bankruptcy because of these risks that they
Mhm.
didn't see coming, right? And so when I was thinking about this role, I thought, okay, so this supply chain, all I'm hearing is how bogged up our supply chain, we can't get anything, everything's sitting around. And nobody was prepared for this. And so I thought this feels like a great time to talk about risk mitigation for suppliers. But what I've really found, and to your point about credit, when I've come in here and I'm like, okay, look, help me understand what you do all day long. How do you understand mitigate the risk that you see today? What are you doing? Well, we pull credit reports. Okay, so you have to sift through 20 pages of a credit report, and just have to decide the risk. And if you're wrong, what happens, right? And there's a
Mhm.
lot, and you're relying on this report to be accurate and to have information and robust information. Well, the days of that are that's becoming an antiquated process. You have to significantly improve your processes to really be ahead of the risk, be more predictive rather than reactive. And so what are they doing? Well, I would say when I go into these different symposiums and we're speaking into the market and trying to understand what things are happening, AI, obviously, automation, everyone is in taking changes and implementing changes within AI, supply chain
Mhm.
wise, credit wise, sales wise. AI is coming in whether we like it or not. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think that that's a big one is they're trying to automate their systems and they're trying to capture as much information as they can. And where can they get this information? Data is gold these days. It is gold.
Mhm.
It's that's why we have Chat GPT because the time it takes to go collect it, I could just ask Chat GPT in most cases, right? And so that's why folks have turned to that. And so I think,
Yep.
folks are really trying to understand, okay, so we've got these softwares. How can we make sure that we have a view of our entire operations? We can see what suppliers we have and what risks do they have. We can see what prospects our commercial teams are going after. Can we do anything to bridge the gap between credit and commercial where we don't always agree on things? Is there a way we can help that as a pain
Mhm.
point? Is there a way that we can prospect and find companies that are credit worthy rather than working on companies that aren't? Is there a way that we can focus on compliance? Is there any resources we can use for compliance or ESG? All of these things are becoming really important, and there's all this data that we have at our fingertips. It's just deciding what data is important to you when you're making your decisions, and how can you make your role more efficient? So, because we have too much to do. And so that's
Yeah.
really, I think, what's happening. Is they're trying to take what they're doing now, implement new processes, which it's not an easy feat. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how y'all are doing it with Mercury, certainly.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, with your experience in the commodity area, I would like to hear your perspective on this industry. Like, is there a lot of risk mitigation in your industry specifically that you're hearing about?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do it in different ways as a transportation provider where we're not the carrier, right? We act as an agent, logistics management company. So typically our receivables are focused on management fees, consulting fees, things like that that of course present risk in not getting paid. In other parts of what we do where we are out for large sums of money that cover freight that we've advanced on behalf of clients and so forth. So we've discussed and implementing different types of risk mitigation tools, credit insurance being potentially one of them, and we've looked at that. We haven't pulled the trigger necessarily yet, but often it has to do with collateral control, right? The actual commodity control to ensure that there's payment prior to release of the collateral, right? The commodity that's being moved. That's the most rudimentary way of dealing with credit risk in transportation, but it's not the best way necessarily. And there are times where we know as we grow, we're going to have issues and client needs that are going to require advancing terms where we're going to want to have credit insurance to help mitigate those risks. So yeah,
Yeah, and the credit insurance, that's such a good point. I mean, with Coface being a credit insurer, there's so many perks to the credit insurance. I mean, I'm not even an agent, so I'm not the expert in trade credit insurance, certainly. But there's the benefits absolutely outweigh everything that comes with it because you can capture a lot more
Mhm.
capital with having the insurance, so you can grow, you can take on more risk. And that security blanket really is nice too. But and then on
Yeah.
the information side, you need both. I think about it all the time because folks will say, well, if I have insurance, why do I need information? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
you know how we all have auto insurance and certainly
Right.
we don't have to pull our deductible because that'll go up if you do.
It- Isn't
We
that like
we
saying,
all have
Chelsea? As I say, isn't that like saying, why do I have to put my glasses on when I'm driving? I have insurance, right?
I have insurance. It's fine. Exactly.
Hmm.
Or I mean, and the auto one is a good one because like I mean, I still have to use Google Maps. I know exactly where I'm going. I'm not a directionally challenged person. I know where I'm going, but I still
Mhm.
pull Google Maps because I want to know what detours, what risks are lying ahead for me on my drive. There's
Yeah.
still going to be a jerk who's going to pull out in front of me that Google Maps didn't prepare me for. And they might tell me the cops coming and slow down, but they're not going to be able to prepare me for the jerk that just blindsides you, right? And so that's still going to
Mhm.
happen. There's going to be someone who's going to blindside you. And so I think that that's important to note. But I think the information is the data that helps us get there safely. The information is how to, it's the maps to that. But the insurance is still necessary, and you really do need both. And they definitely aren't a one or the other. Because in
Mhm.
some capacity, again, it can be used in multiple ways. But
I'm shocked to hear anyone would even think that, right? To think that, yeah, just making multiple claims against your insurance policy is going to affect your business in by not having a good overview on what's going on from the business information intelligence side, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or they
that's
think it's
crazy.
the opposite. Maybe if I just have your information, I don't need the insurance, right? And it's like, well, not the case because it's again, we
Yeah,
really try to be predictive and prepare for it, but there's still
yeah,
things that happen and that are out of the control. So
yeah.
I think, and I could use examples all day long that I hear all day long. I mean, because you speak about the geopolitical and country conflicts and the wars and the climate. I mean, the Panama
Mm-hmm.
Canal and the Red Sea attacks and all of these things that affect getting our
Mm-hmm.
goods from one place to another. So, I mean, as
Yeah.
much as I'd love to talk about the things I'd be curious to hear you, Anton, like what negative effects are happening, like when things like that happen, what negative effects are you seeing? How's this affecting your businesses?
I think the biggest negative effect, Chelsea, is the fact that when something like that happens, that I have to hide under my desks from the media calling me constantly. But let's put
Bloomberg.
Anton aside. Maybe it's not about me and my and the
It
fact
is
that my
about you.
phone's ringing off the hook, right? Like when I made the joke last night when the longshoreman negotiation and strike threat subsided for the U.S. East Coast and Gulf Coast. I was blasting the articles out to our client base last night to let everyone know that we were kind of potentially out of the woods. That it looked like a tentative agreement was reached. And I told one client, I said, forget about the longshoremen. I'm just happy that I'm not going to be getting calls from the media asking me what's going on and having to do that. So it kind of, I made that joke. But
Selfishly,
yeah,
it works for you.
yeah, right. Exactly. Like, yeah, it's just, yeah, I'd rather be focused on actually handling business. But um, I've often said, right, the chaos that ensues with these supply chain challenges are why we're valuable and why our company's in this business and why we provide value to our clients because we know how to navigate it. We know how to structure agreements to prepare for things that are going to come up, at least to mitigate some of the risks in these various challenges. But we are. It's a mix of intelligence, paying attention, right, understanding what's happening in different parts of the world that are pertinent to supply chain, from Panama Canal and what's happening there, and a lot happening lately, to what's happening in the Red Sea with the Houthi attacks and its effect on ship transit going through the Suez Canal, to climate change and what's transpiring right now in new supply chain routes via the northern Arctic routes that are now starting to spring up that have never been accessible except for the melting ice, and now presenting new routing for freight moving from, for example, from China into North Europe and so forth. So understanding what's happening, keeping tabs on various aspects of geopolitical matters throughout the world is so critical, right? That we're ahead of that we're not being caught off guard by what's happening, that we're the ones giving guidance to our clients on it, that we're preparing ahead of time for these risks. So with the longshoremen, the port negotiations that have been so much on the front headlines over the past few months, right, we've been warning our clients that this has been coming, that January 15th was the deadline of the temporary agreement that was settled in October, that there could possibly be a problem there, to brace for it, that we were going to be watching it closely, to look if anything was mission critical or timing was going to be critical, that we should look at alternative routing for shipments at that point. So being ahead of it, important, right? And understanding what's going on. Panama Canal's had all kinds of problems over the past year or so, with a couple of years with drought situations kind of subsided now at this point, but understanding why we're seeing ocean freight, why we were seeing ocean freight much higher for freight for shipments that were transiting through the Panama Canal, because of this problem, and the fact that ships were being restricted to 20 ships per day versus 40 ships per day, was important, right? To explain to our clients that, to look at alternate routes, to understand whether or not it made sense to pay the higher freight waiting for the canal, or going round South America, or going to routing the other direction into the Mediterranean. But this is why this aspect of business intelligence, business information, is so critical for not just what we do, right, but for our clients, right? And they rely on
Yeah.
us to be
You have to have that information. You have to have, and I think that's I think a big differentiator that really draws people to Coface, is because we are a global company. Whether I'm talking to a company that they may only do business domestically,
Mhm,
but I think what isn't being thought about is when folks are evaluating their risk, they're only looking at the company ABC. And
mhm,
what they're not considering is okay, well, company ABC, they do all of the operations in the US. But company ABC is also really reliant on a supplier that is out of Saudi Arabia, let's say.
mhm.
And
Right.
if that supplier, which is a critical supplier for whatever they're manufacturing, they're knocking on bankruptcy door. And in order to replace that supplier, it's going to take them 2 years. And they have zero
Mhm,
idea that it's coming, and they're not prepared. And so and so they're looking at company ABC, but company ABC could very well be filing bankruptcy tomorrow, because these guys are going to go out of business, and they're not going to have any goods to get to sell out. And so it's a whole, domino effect. And
mhm.
people don't often think about outside of their one job. And their,
Absolutely.
and their main job is what's the risk of a company ABC? Well, the difference for us is being that we do have boots on the ground in 200 different countries, similar to yourself. We have to have that expertise. We have to really have a really strong understanding of the risks and the political conflict that's happening, and the macroeconomic situations, and the banking climate, and the business climate, and the different industries, and also, when you do business internationally and you're dealing with a company out of Indonesia, they could say whatever they want to you over the phone. Well, we have someone located there that can go knock on a door. That helps, right? And
Mhm,
having a pulse of really where everything is from a global perspective, I think is really important. And it's critical in predicting the risk. It's not just what's their credit score and what do their financials look like. It's who do they do business with? Let's use the example of, I was sitting in the Denver International Airport, during that lovely situation where I happened to be flying Frontier that day, and I'm sitting at my gate and there's a delay. And I'm like, oh gosh. So, some kind of system is down. I'm thinking, these poor IT people that work for Frontier, they right now, I know they're busting to get that fixed. And then you hear it was actually a Microsoft Outlook issue. Oh, Microsoft Outlook, I bet they weren't determining. And then Microsoft Outlook's like, it's actually a CrowdStrike issue. And here we've
mhm.
gone down 3 tertiary levels of risk. And Frontier and Delta and all of these companies are now super affected because I'm not going after CrowdStrike to return my money that I have to pay back because I had to go buy a
Mhm.
different ticket to get home with Southwest, right? So Frontier has to pay me back, and who's going to go? Frontier's not going to go after CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike's getting hit hard. CrowdStrike's, we saw their stock, we saw what it affected, how it affected those types of events, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, this one is going to be broadly, it's media is going to capture this one, and we're all going to hear about it because it's affecting airfare, but and
Mhm.
the airlines and us getting to and from and travel. But when it's normal business operations like cell phone sales or semiconductor sales or something like that, it might not be something that's top of mind in the media that we're all going to hear about that we knew was coming. And so what do you do? How do you know? And
Mhm.
so that's where you really need data, and you need folks that have the data, and you need to make sure that the data is not 2 years old, because 2 years ago looked a lot different. And I was just thinking about this when I was writing my 2025 New Year's post, thinking, this whole resolution thing, it's all great and dandy until you walk into 2025, you're like, this is how it's going to go. And then you end it and you're like, that was not exactly what I was expecting. I always think of that movie, Black Sheep, when I don't know if you've seen that with Chris Farley, but
Oh
he,
yeah, absolutely
Chris Farley,
classic.
David Spade.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're putting those signs up, and he ends up falling down the mountain and rolling, and he's holding on to the root, and he gets at the end of the hill, and he's like, "What was that about?" It's like that's life, right? And so,
Uh-huh.
what do we not know that's going to happen in 25? And let me tell you, 2025, it could be fun. It could be fun. I don't know what's going to happen, but you
Yeah,
know.
well, we got to put on the news and see what's happening to know that we're in for a wild ride. Need some. I was debating making Mercury goofy seat belts, like with the Mercury logo on them, and sending them to clients. I thought that'd be great.
That's a
Like,
great marketing tool. That's a
buckle
great,
up, right? Yeah, exactly. You're buckle up.
great
Mercury's giving you
marketing.
your seatbelt for 2025. I thought,
Yeah, no, that's great because that's the truth.
yeah.
Every year, honestly, since COVID, I think we've all realized, woo, anything can happen. And what do we how can we get ahead of it? How can we predict it? What trends can we watch? What can we do to be prepared as best possible? And I think that's ultimately, your
Yeah.
industry is one huge one. It's a critical one. But
Mhm.
so many of the things that we rely on to do our day to day are really,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we take for granted as we're sipping our coffee. It's like, I think I
Mhm.
got something, my chocolate prices are going to go up. There's a shortage of chocolate. And when sriracha was out, oh, the world was over. I mean,
Yeah, I
sriracha
wasn't happy.
not
Definitely
on
not
the
happy about
shelves.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So these things affect us, and so it's just
Yep.
interesting to learn everything that happens and what we can do to prepare so we don't have those types of things happening. So
Mhm. Yep. By the way, I believe the CrowdStrike issue was resolved when they just unplugged it and plugged it back in. So it turned out that was all they needed to do.
simple
I have
fix.
I just have inside information on that, so just in case anyone wants to know, it was just needed to be unplugged and plugged back in. So that was it. Yeah, it was all good.
It was the
Eh,
biggest hack.
exactly. Yeah, nah, it just needed to be unplugged. That was all. That was
Be unplugged. Simple fix. No
it.
big deal. All
Right?
millions of dollars later, it's fine.
Yeah, should have called me in the first place. So it's just turn off, turn it back on. That fixes 99.9% of all technical issues. So,
Yes.
so tell me, so now that you're fully immersed in all things ITFA Americas and ITFA, and you're interacting with financial institutions and the insurance brokers and trading companies, right? That we brought into the mix in ITFA. How are you finding how they are dealing with credit risk, with risk management, with consuming and actually going out and making sure that they have the proper level of business information and intelligence coming in. So in talking to everybody, what's the reaction, right, in terms of what you're seeing from the ITFA membership, right?
So it's been a really fun opportunity in ITFA because my conversations are unique in that the personas are different, and that the
Hmm.
different types of businesses are in there. I have historically been more focused on aerospace. I have a big aerospace and logistics and media portfolio. And so that's what I spend a lot of my time on. And so when I came into ITFA, it was a really opportunity for me to listen and sit back and hear what are the topics of conversation that are important to this audience, and how and what information are they using. And of course, the IFA members, they know about the insurance. And even when I'm like, okay, but not insurance, I'm BI, they're like,
Right.
what's
Yeah.
so what is that? Right.
Mhm.
And so what makes it difficult, first of all, business information is such a broad name. So what
Mhm.
does that mean? Like, what's business information? So when you're talking about business information, sometimes I can say, well, who do you use for your credit report provider? And they're like, okay, I got you. I now know where you're playing, what field you're playing in, because, you know, they all are very familiar with how the insurance works. They're all very familiar with trade credit insurance within IFA, but they're very unaware that we even had the business information offering, like I mentioned earlier. And so it's been really trying to understand, okay, so what information are these guys using? A lot of them are using credit rating agencies, and a lot of them are using credit reporting agencies. And they really feel they're necessary evil, especially when you're part of the banks, right? They're the regulators,
Mhm.
you have to use the credit rating agencies. There's certain things you have an internal, rating, and you have your external ratings, and it's really heavily regulated. And so
Yeah.
there's some things that they have control over, and some things that they just don't. But I think what we're finding, especially with the Basel III Endgame and the discussions of what that looks like. Of course, now that could change. We'll see for U.S. We'll see, but I think that that's something of how can we compete in a space where, we can't rate our subsidiaries. We can't put a rating on our subsidiaries, and we evaluate a lot
Mhm.
of parent companies and subsidiaries. And so that's been an interesting conversation. There's been again, what are we doing for our small business commercial teams? Like, how are we supporting and mitigating our credit risk there? And what are we utilizing? Is there areas that we can capture more information? I think what's interesting and what differentiates us is that we do have skin in the game. We share that risk.
Mhm.
And so that differentiates us, because Coface, this is the same information that we use to
Yeah.
underwrite our 700 billion in account receivables with our insurance. So like,
Yeah. That's
we got
such
to
a
be
that's
kind
such
of
a
right.
That's such a good point, right? You're talking about putting money where the mouth is, right?
Yeah,
That this information is also what's being used by the teams that are underwriting the credit risk, right? So yeah,
exactly. So if we're wrong,
such
we
a
pay
great
out on the
point.
other side. We want to be
Yeah.
right. We have some, so we understand and share that risk, and we understand what's on the line for Joe. And I always say it's like you bring Coface on, you basically are hiring 700 data analysts and underwriters to your team. And then furthermore, not only do we aggregate data from providers and try to pull up as much information and invest in information so we can have accurate information to underwrite, but then we capture great information from our policyholders that
Hmm.
we maintain, the
Right.
confidentiality of this
Hmm.
information, and we have a process in place where we can provide great scores and credit opinions and late payment information and financial analysis, and still keep the confidentiality, and really be able to give a quick picture so someone could see the risk, make a decision quickly, and feel good and confident to where did that decision come from and what went into that decision,
Hmm.
and they can keep it moving. And so it makes them faster at their job. It covers the space of area that they don't have today from the market. It helps with their international needs. It helps with the private. I would say international and private. As much as I would love for people to just give all of their business to Coface, the reality is that's not a reality. But what the reality is that the market needs something for international and private, and that's where we are the strongest. And so it's been something that I've found a lot of people are excited about, because they didn't really know that they had this as an option on the market. And
Hmm.
so it's been something that I think we're getting excited about. Now, as far as use cases, especially because I get to work with the brokers, I love brokers. I love it. It's been a great way for me to meet the brokers. You guys have a great
Hmm.
broker community.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I love working with brokers because they're problem solvers. And I love to say, okay, well, what are the problems? Because even though I have my typical use cases and bridging gaps between departments, I think ultimately, what's the problem? And we have a lot of data. We might be able to get clever and figure out how can we solve that problem with the information that we have at our hands. So I like that we can problem solve together and kind of hear what's in the market, what's the pain point, what do they need, what's primary focus? What are the goals for their year? Are their objectives to grow into new countries? Are their
Mhm.
objectives to put together new policies and procedures? Are they implementing a whole new software program? What are the things that are happening that you're hearing that we could potentially help with that, so we can be problem solvers, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, yep. That's great. And we're working hard, and something that's been near and dear to my heart. We're working hard on bringing in more people and companies from the trade, right? Commodity traders. Of course, that's just my natural area, right? But not necessarily just from the commodity sector, right? But more people from corporates, from the consumers of credit insurance, of business intelligence, of trade finance, of supply chain services. So our natural collective client base. That's why we did that New York event, right? That we were both
So
there
great.
for,
Yeah, you
right?
did
Now we're
such a good job recruiting so many new faces to the
yeah,
organization, by the way.
getting new blood in, right? And now we have more for everyone out there. We're going to have London on May 15th. Commodities event hosted by our friends at Aon at the Leadenhall building, the cheese grater building in the city of London, and the CEO of the London Metal Exchange is going to be participating in the panel there. So very good commodities event. So if it's going to be the London event of the year or something along those lines. I'm just kind
I,
of
I already can tell you're going to find a way to recruit me to be there. So thank you
yeah,
for putting that in. I'm
ab
going. I'm just going to put those dates on my calendar
absolutely.
now.
Chelsea, if we can have martinis at Gibson's in Chicago, we have to have martinis at the place for martinis, which is the Duke's Bar in London, which is famous for its
Duke's Bar.
martinis.
Okay. I've never
So
been to
that's
London, and I'm here. I'm never down. I'm never going to turn down as long as
yeah,
Coface will
yeah,
allow me. I'm sure we can
yeah.
find a reason. So
Yeah,
going to
we have some things to talk
London.
about on that. We'll catch up on more on that later. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, on the notes that I have too, the one thing I wanted to cover too, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but the commercial and procurement teams and the struggle often internally for on credit insurance and risk assessment on clients, right? It's always the struggle, and I've seen it over the years from the traders that we're often working with are constrained, and often sometimes there's a little bit of rough back and forth between them and their in-house credit risk teams, right? In terms of getting credit lines for sales on steel, which is something we've been so heavily involved in. So there's always that balance in traders can't be completely risk averse, right? They can't completely shy away from it, but they can't do what I said earlier, which is take off the glasses and say, well, we got insurance and then drive the car, right? So what capacity, right, are these teams like working together? What are you seeing in terms of them in-house at whether it's a trading company or a retail goods company or other companies that are the consumers of credit insurance? How are you seeing how they're bridging the gap internally so that they're working together to build a business and it's not this adverse relationship between commercial and risk management internally?
Yeah, this is actually something that's pretty, it's one of my like main purposes. And when I go into an organization, while I know we're talking about credit risk, my very first thing is what keeps you up at night internally with your organization? What isn't working? And what I find is there's generally conflict between departments. And
Mhm.
I think that that's an
Yeah.
area that we could really be helpful in. And how, I think credit is the backbone. It's the backbone. It really is. And if as long as we can all just own that and understand that while commercial is who feeds everybody at the table, um, credit is ultimately the one that has to take the risk and put it on the line. And it what helps us be competitive. It helps us get opportunities we didn't otherwise have. It helps our customers, and so in order to build strong relationship and build our company, we need credit. And so there's a lot of things, that credit is benefit of, but sometimes because they have to be the bad guy, they don't always have strong relationships internally. And so you
Mhm.
have commercial teams who are like, And I always want to know, what is the process when does your commercial team have to do any vetting on their own, or can they just go after whatever lead comes their way, sell it, and then ask for forgiveness when they sold a $50,000 deal, but they're only worth 10K, or something like that. So what does that look like? And oftentimes they've made sure that the sales has some sort of vetting process prior. And so we really are trying to bridge the gap in communication between the different departments. And so it's, how can we help commercial? So maybe we vet prospects through your sales, say you use Salesforce, pull all those Salesforce companies in through our system just to get a quick score. You don't need all the financial analysis and everything, but just what's the score today? And if it's a
Mhm.
good score, go ahead. Go ahead. We'll be happy if you sell that, and we'll be ready to give the credit limit that you sell. If it's not a great score, then maybe it's put on the back burner. Same with suppliers, right? So when you're trying to replace, I mean, I deal with a lot of aerospace and logistics, and so they have a lot of suppliers, and especially aerospace, it can be a very difficult and daunting task to replace those suppliers if
Mhm.
someone were
Okay.
to decide to bankrupt, and or you may have to be a certain company that has to purchase one of your critical suppliers, because if that supplier goes bankrupt, um, you no longer have what you need to manufacture your planes. And so you have to just purchase that company so that way they don't, right? And so there's a lot of things that can affect you as a business if your suppliers go awry. So, so the procurement teams don't always have the credit or finance background. And so they don't necessarily understand how to appropriately mitigate that risk and understand the risk of a supplier. And so we can kind of help. Again, financials aren't, because they're not extending credit to suppliers. It's not necessarily how much credit should we give them. But we would like to know, if we're going to the market and we're doing an RFP and we're surveying 100 or 20 companies, let's narrow it down first by, give us their score. What's their default, the probability of default in the next 12 months? Is it likely? Is it unlikely? And if it seems safe, then we'll that's how we'll kind of narrow down our analysis of which
Mhm.
what suppliers will choose. So there's different ways that we can do it, but we really definitely help bridge the gap of pain points, because everybody's coming to credit, and credit only has so many people, and they only have so much time, and they can't do everybody's job, and they don't have time to train everybody. And so we can really kind of help. But overall, when they bridge the gap together and they work more cohesively, they can sell more. They're more successful in sales, they're more successful in getting their payments, and
Mhm.
keeping their AR down, keeping their DSOs down, because they've communicated up front together. And so overall, it protects their bottom line and increases their revenue, and allows them to take on more risk, because they're
Mhm.
working together and they're not working on silos. So it's something that I really value. And I think that that's like what I try to do is like, okay, what are you guys doing? Let me help come in and make this process better, because I'm going to guarantee it's not a strong one. There's many of them that aren't very strong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I could see how you could be in there and being a change agent, right, in terms of bridging gap, helping them understand the different teams' roles, and trying to get them together, and being collaborative, right? Oh, yeah, and it's a challenge at some places, that's for sure. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but I'll bet
Well, I would say,
I bet
I
on
would say,
you.
yeah, you know what? It's exactly. I love a good challenge, and I love to solve problems. And I don't know. This is a shameless plug for Enneagram. I'm not like I don't do anything. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Enneagram, but it's just like a personality test, and it's a number 1 to 9, and I'm a 2, which is a helper. And when I realized, okay, well, this is what makes me tick. This is what drives me all day long. If I'm not
Yeah.
doing in my career something that I know is directly helping, I feel I have no purpose. And
Mhm.
so when I recognized that, I got into this role, I immediately realized this is great, because not, and I mean, is it always dramatic as I'm saving the world? No, but I feel like, if I can help the economy in a positive way, and what I do all day long has an impact on the economy in a positive way, I feel good about what I do every day, and that makes me happy. So it's been fun. I'm always learning. I'm always learning. Again, not having the experience has been really fun, but I get to ask a lot of questions, and I appreciate people for dealing with me and all the questions I ask. So that being said, I know this is your interview, but the real question, when are we seeing you on Bloomberg again? You're famous. I just, I'm here with famous Anton,
Definitely not famous,
Mr.
but
Bloomberg.
I was you see when I was on right before
Yes.
Christmas on the 23rd, right, where
So
they
good.
put up the pictures of me when I was on the ship, the
Yes,
Navy
it was
tanker
so
going through the
good.
Panama Canal. Yeah, the thin young Anton at that point, which was great. I so that was good. I was up in New York for Christmas, so that worked out well to be in there, and it just so turns out that we decided we're invading Panama 2 days before I was going to go in. So I gave the producers a heads up that when I was a cadet at New York Maritime College at Fort Schuyler, I went during Christmas break 1991 and sailed on the USNS Sealift Arabian Sea and sailed through the Panama Canal carrying jet fuel to the Navy base on the Pacific side of the canal. And it was great timing to impart all things in my brain, Panama Canal to the world. So fun, really fun Bloomberg spot at that point. They like to have me on and talk about shipping, supply chain matters, what's happening in all things world of crazy commodity trade. I thought I gave the producers a heads up, actually, that I would be available to talk about the what I thought was going to be a port strike coming up in next week, right? But that seems to be averted, so I probably won't need to be on then at this point. So you never know, right? It depends what's going to come up. That's going to be another
What
curveball.
2025 has in
Crazy.
store for you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, usually your
yeah,
appearances mean that things are going awry, I would imagine. So
mhm,
I don't want things to go awry. So I
yeah.
mean, as much as I know we love you on Bloomberg, when you're usually on there, things aren't going well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always whether it's Bloomberg TV, Bloomberg Radio, or Bloomberg Odd Lots podcast, which is great. Our friends there. It's always fun, but man, I always say I have a face for radio, so I don't want to keep putting me on TV and on videos, but
You look great. You're
so,
doing a great job. You're a pro now. Yeah, you've been on there so
uh,
much, you get it. I mean, pretty soon you'll have your own makeup artist. You'll be so fancy, they'll
I
keep
you
your hair.
know well, first time I was on Bloomberg TV and I was doing it from home and I asked one of my daughters, Nicole's sister, Sarah, to maybe put on a little bit of something so it wasn't so I didn't look like too pale on it. She's like, I don't know what to do. And she like, over it, forget it. That's it. Now I have a ring light. I got microphones. It's like it's getting all pro,
You're
but
official now.
no, nothing better than going into the studio in New York. That's the most fun. You're there
Yeah.
with a couple of weeks ago, it was with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Surveillance. So it was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
always fun. So I love doing that. Yeah, and it doesn't
Well, I love
doesn't
your
hurt.
home studio too, though. I do love
Yeah,
your home studio.
uh,
Looks good.
that's my Navy commission behind me that reminding me that if I could fit into a uniform, I'd have to choose whether or not I'm going on either the Greenland invasion or the Panama invasion. Now, I'm going to choose Panama because I'm better with tropical climates, I think. So, but again, I
Get them off.
can't fit in my uniform at the moment, so it's not happening. But yeah.
2025, you never know.
Yeah, we'll see, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Martinis in London that we're going to have are not going to help, by the way.
That's
So,
not gonna help. Maybe
yeah.
salads in London. We'll have salads in London.
Okay. We could do that. We could do
And
that.
I'll have coffee. I'll always have coffee.
Yeah.
It
Right. All
was
right.
so
Well,
fun.
yeah, this was a lot of fun as always, as we knew it would be, Chelsea. So as if
Yes,
there was
yes.
any doubt, right? But thank you so much for coming on. We'll wrap it up now and get back to our day jobs. But thank you so much for coming on, Chelsea. This was fantastic. Look forward to Chelsea taking the helm for a future ITFA Insights podcast where Chelsea will be the host and come up with
I
some
love it.
great guests to have on because we want to have more people hosting our podcast. This series is going to be various people within the ITFA membership and board and friends taking the lead on hosting episodes. So we're always open to new and interesting topics in trade and finance and risk management and supply chain and all things that fall into these categories. So yeah, next podcast Chelsea's going to be hosting it. So
Oh, wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you having us, me, and being able to talk about Coface. I really appreciate that. I more or less just would love to hear from people. So, of course, I hope people will listen and find us on LinkedIn and And then I would love to have the opportunity to interview some more folks and learn from others. So I'm happy to host. I'll be happy to come back, Anton.
Awesome. We're taking you
Have
up
a
on that.
wonderful afternoon then. Enjoy
Yeah.
that Florida weather because it's cold here and I know you don't miss the snow.
It's like 55 degrees here. It's freezing, for God's sakes. Yeah, it's crazy.
You really are Floridian now. You've really become Floridian.
I had to put long pants on yesterday. This is crazy. This is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they called school in Texas and it's 39 and raining and they called school. I'm
Yeah.
like, for what? There's no ice. So yeah, welcome to the South. We're dramatic.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Thank you so
all right,
much. I
buddy.
really appreciate it. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.